Hey guys, I hope you've been enjoying all of your snow days. I'm recording this at 6:40 on Tuesday or Monday evening, and we haven't had that big blizzard they keep talking about. But they did already cancel school for tomorrow, so this is how we're doing Tuesday stuff. We finished up last unit. I gave you Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday to finish that Flipgrid. So hopefully you guys got that test done. Um, but we're going to go ahead and start the next unit. This is the last unit of this 9 weeks. We're probably sitting at week like 5 or 6. I don't know. I've lost track. All these weeks have been so weird. But this unit is all about elections, how elections work, and the political parties. I like to focus mostly on the political parties and then do the elections when we actually talk about the president, because I just feel like that electoral college lends itself more to that unit. But I don't know. We did it last year, obviously early because of the election, so we'll just see how I feel whenever we get to that part. Um, but for today, I usually start out this unit with a little questionnaire, and I haven't changed it just to kind of show you what I normally ask because unfortunately, you guys took government like during the worst semester after a presidential election because there's no elections going on, there's no primaries going on. It's all pretty quiet. The new congressmen and women and the new president have taken office, and everyone's still bickering and fighting, of course, but there's nothing going on as far as elections go. So I usually ask students who if they're going to plan on voting, and I usually get about 50% or so. We don't have a primary in Indiana this year. And then I ask students who know they're voting for. And of course, mostly students already know who they're voting for, which is a little sad to me because I don't think they know all the candidates. Here's a question for you. Who is up for election this year in Indiana? Well, last year I asked that to students. I asked them if it was a representative or a senator or both or neither. And this year there's none because this is not an election year. But next year there will be a senator up for election in Indiana. So next year at this time you'll be seeing a lot of news as far as who's going to challenge Joe Donnelly for the Indiana senator seat. And he'll be in the news and you'll see all the ads again and it'll be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I also usually do Pear Deck. I don't know if you guys have done Pear Deck before, where it's kind of interactive. Like you would log on almost like a Kahoot, and then the slides would pop up on your screen, and you can draw on them on some slides and interact. And I usually ask students how well they think they know the political parties, as far as what they believe, what they want to do, kind of what their big issues they support are. So what do you guys think? How well do you think you know the political parties? Here's a little. Sorry, I was gonna hang nail. Um, Here's a little just pre-test for this unit to see what you guys know. These are pretty simple. Usually students aren't very confident, and then they go through these and they kind of know what's going on. They kind of feel like they do pretty well here. Who would like to increase taxes on the wealthy, Republicans or Democrats? Who would like to make abortion illegal? Who supports building a physical border and allowing fewer immigrants into the country? Again, this was made whenever this was more a hot button topic. Nobody ever talks about the wall anymore. Who would like to spend federal money to combat global warming? Who would like fewer government regulations and let the free market prevail? Who would like to battle voter fraud by requiring ID when voting? Let's run back through those just real quick. See how well you think you know. Democrats usually want to increase taxes on the wealthy. Who would like to make abortion illegal? That's usually Republicans. They're usually pro-life. Who supports building a physical border and allowing fewer immigrants into the country? That's typically a Republican perspective. Who would like to spend federal money to combat global warming? That is a liberal Democrat perspective. Who would like fewer government regulations and let the free market prevail? That would be Republicans. Who would like to battle voter fraud? That's typically Republicans as well. Now, the thing I would like to encourage you to do throughout this unit, and I know it's dang near impossible right now to be bipartisan and to try to look at other people's perspectives, but I can't for the life of me imagine that the people who have the opposite beliefs from me, I'm not going to tell you if I'm liberal or conservative, I'll let you guys try to figure that out on your own. But the people who have opposite political beliefs than me, I refuse to believe that they sit there twiddling their thumbs thinking, how can I ruin the country? How can I make things awful for everybody? right? Everyone believes the things that they want to do will make things better or it's more fair. Okay? I don't want to villainize. I don't want any of us to villainize the other side. Okay? Yeah, now again, having different political beliefs is fine. I don't want to condone ignorance, and I don't want to condone, these silly conspiracy theories that are going out there right now. But when someone, like let's just take the abortion issue. People are saying, that the the conservatives want to force women. They want to control women's bodies. Like, no, I don't think that that's what they want to do. They want to preserve life. They think that all lives are sacred, and they want to preserve life. But then you look on the other side, like, oh well, they just want to kill babies. Like, no, they don't want to kill babies. They believe that that their lives will be disproportionately affected, and they feel like the government shouldn't have a power over their body. Like, we feel everyone has a rationale for their opinion, and I encourage you to try to understand from their perspective how this works. For example, like let's say, who would like to increase taxes on the wealthy? That's the Democrats, right? And you say, well, that sounds fair. It sounds bad to say Republicans want to give rich people more money, but there is an, an a rationale behind it. And I want you to try to consider it and try to get in that mindset as opposed to just saying, I disagree with them. They're trying to make things bad. No, no one in government is trying to make things bad. At least I hope not anyway. Okay, so that's my big spiel for this unit. Let's talk about politics in general. So, one thing to keep in mind is government and politics are different. Okay, government is the actual system. That's the Constitution stuff. Politics is the process. Like we talk about how we put people up for, like the Constitution talks about how we elect a president, but there's nothing in there about how we elect nominees. That's where the politics come in. That's how political parties get involved. They're the ones who put these people up for election. Okay, they are pretty important. Definition, you don't need another tip of the textbook definition, but political parties are organizations of people with a common beliefs who work together to win elections and affect government. Okay, so government is the actual system. Politics is trying to win the system, I guess you could say, where you get your opinions across. Okay, and here's a question for you. You guys all read the Constitution, right? Every single one of you read the Constitution and did not Google a single answer during that Constitution scavenger hunt. So, what does the Constitution say about political parties? Do you remember what it said about them in there? The answer is nothing. There is absolutely nothing about political parties in the Constitution. So everything about political parties is completely made up. And you hear this a lot. What would the Founding Fathers think of today's state of political affairs? What do you think? Well, if the Founding Fathers could see what's going on today, what do you think they would say? Or what do you think they would think about it? Now, a lot of us would probably say, "Oh, they're rolling over in their graves right now. They're so mad and upset about what's going on today." I disagree with that. I don't think that's true, um, because they were just as petty as we were. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Think about all the bickering and squabbling and fighting they had when they were writing the Constitution about representation in Congress. The big states were like, no, we want to control it, so it needs to be based on population. And the little states were saying, no, that's not fair. We all need equal representation. We don't want the big states to have extra say. And then the southern states said, well, we want slaves to count as people because we want more power. And it's all petty power grabs. And it was happening as soon back to when we even established this country. Alexander Hamilton called political parties the most fatal disease. George Washington called the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of the party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of wise people to discourage and restrain it. Basically saying we should keep political parties in check because they're really bad. They're going to cause problems. So he was a wise man. But again, here's another specific example, okay, of some really petty stuff that was happening with the Founding Fathers. Like I said, they were fighting about representation just like we fought about the border wall or Obamacare. Take this, for instance. John Adams, he was the second president of the United States, and he was a Federalist, if you guys remember the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists were the ones who wanted, do you remember, a strong or a weak government? What do you think? They wanted a strong central government. And then Thomas Jefferson, who actually wrote the Declaration of Independence, did not want a strong government. He said that, it's too close to a monarchy. So he and John Adams did not like each other. They did not get along with each other. So a little bit of history here. I'm going to make it real quick. When George Washington was the president, he made a treaty with England, which made France really mad because they were at war with England. And whenever Adams became president, he wanted to patch things up with France. He's like, hey, can we be friends again? And France basically said, we're not going to talk to you unless you give us a bunch of money. Like, you need to give us $250,000 and loan us $10 million. It was called the XYZ affair. We said no. And we worried about a possible war with France, that they were going to invade us. And we actually passed some pretty severe new laws called the Alien and Sedition Acts. There's a couple of things in here. One of them made it harder to become a citizen. It moved that, remember the requirement, you have to live here for so long? It moved that requirement from 5 years to 14 years. And why did they do this? Why would they want to make it harder to become a citizen? Well, because immigrants favored the Democratic Republicans, the other party, and they didn't want them to vote. Does that sound familiar? I mean, right now we're talking about one group trying to make it easy to become a citizen and one group trying to make it harder to become a citizen because of who they vote for. It's exactly the same thing we're doing today. So they raised the citizenship requirements. Another part, the alien part of this act, I guess, said that if we're at war, we can arrest and deport all people from a certain country. I mean, that's pretty strong. The idea that just because you're from a country, we can deport you from that country. Like, if there were French people living here and we went to war with France, we could just say, all right, get out, French people. Pretty serious. And then the big one that I wanted to bring up was called the Sedition Act. It's the sedition piece of this, this basically made it illegal to talk bad about the U.S. government. Can you imagine if that was around today? The newspapers were battling it out over who they supported and what they wrote about politicians. Does that sound familiar? I mean, look at Fox News. They trashed Joe Biden and they worship Donald Trump. And look at CNN. It's the opposite. They worship Joe Biden and they trash Donald Trump. It's exactly the same thing. Can you imagine if that was passed today? Like, all these, if Joe Biden is the president now, he could just arrest everybody at Fox News if he wanted to, right? Not that he would do that. This law was only in effect for 3 years, and at least 26 people were arrested, including a Republican congressman who wrote letters to the government, or letters to a newspaper trashing the government. He was arrested, put in jail for 4 months, and he won re-election in jail. I mean, that's crazy stuff. That's crazy stuff that you think you would only see today, but this was happening hundreds of years ago in the United States. So again, when you hear people say, oh, the Founding Fathers would be turning over in their graves, I don't think so. I think they would jump right into the fray and get petty and mix it up and argue with us just as much. Okay? So anyway, this is the main piece I wanted to get to today. Political parties, everyone hates politics, they say. They're the worst, politicians are the worst, but political parties can actually be helpful. And that's what I want you to know about specifically. How can political parties be helpful? One of them is that they tell you info about a candidate. Donald Trump. You say, well, Donald Trump is a Republican, right? Or how about this guy? I say, this guy's name is John Republican. What are 2 things that you know for a fact he would support just because he's Republican? Write them down. What are 2 things you know this guy would support just because he's Republican? And you could put a lot of stuff down here. You could say he's pro-life. He probably supports the Second Amendment, gun rights. He is for lower income taxes. He wants less regulations on the market. I mean, you could go on and on and on. Just because you know he's a Republican. If there weren't political parties, you'd have to know everybody's individual beliefs, which would kind of be hard to keep track of. So that's helpful. They also often help voters. They try to get people registered to vote. We saw a big movement last year where Democrats and Republicans were trying to get people registered to vote. Sometimes they'll even take you to your polling place to help you vote. They're also a government watchdog, meaning that right now, Democrats are in charge. Democrats have a majority in the House, in the Senate, and they have the presidency. The Republicans are keeping an eye on the Democrats. So if they do something they don't like, Republicans can tell the public about it. And vice versa. That's what the Democrats did when Trump was in office. Every time he made any law, they would just go tell everybody how bad it was and how awful it was. So they kind of have this watchdog effect, the fact that they keep an eye on the opposite party. And the other thing they do is stability. Because right now, Donald Trump did not have a high approval rating throughout his presidency. We didn't like him. Sorry, you might be hearing thumping. That's my kids running around upstairs. Um, Donald Trump was not a popular president if you look at the polls. Um, so if we don't like the president, what do? Well, we vote them out and vote the other party in. But what if there was only one political party? Imagine a world where there's only one political party and we don't like that party. It's really unpopular. How would you get that government out of power if there was only one political party and you couldn't just vote for the other party? How would you get them out of power? Well, it would probably be a revolution, is what it would be. Okay. Um, if we didn't like the Republicans, but we couldn't vote for Democrats, what else could we do but just overthrow the government and install a whole new type of government? And you see that in other countries. You see that all the time with other systems where there's only one party in charge, and they can't do anything to overthrow it. So, really, political parties, we trash them a lot, and they are very, 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 very frustrating, but they do have some helpful things. Okay, it would be a lot harder to know what people stand for if they weren't Democrats or Republicans. It would not be good to only have one political party because we wouldn't be able to change our system, and we wouldn't have anybody informing us on the other political party, what they're secretly trying to do if there was only one. So they are kind of helpful. All right, we're going to stop there. This was the homework for today, so hopefully you guys got this done, and hopefully you guys are staying safe and warm. All right, see ya.